After I presented my sustainable fashion collection to the investors, my husband stood up from his seat in the front row, let out a theatrical laugh, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse my wife. She seems to think burlap and recycled plastic belong on a runway. Security, please escort her out. This is a professional event." I stood there frozen as two security guards approached me, my hands trembling so badly I dropped my design portfolio. The scattered sketches of my hemp blend evening gowns landed at the feet of investors I'd spent months trying to reach. That was the moment I realized my marriage to Marcus Whitmore, editor-in-chief of Fashion Metropolitan magazine, was built on a foundation of contempt I'd been too naive to see. Let me back up. I'm Sarah Whitmore, or at least I was until 6 months ago when I reclaimed my maiden name, Sarah Chen. I'm 62 years old now, but this story takes place when I was 61, still clinging to the belief that my husband of 35 years actually respected me. Marcus and I met at Parsons School of Design in Manhattan back in 1983. I was studying fashion design, he was studying fashion journalism. We were the golden couple. I had the creative vision, he had the words to describe it. After graduation, I worked as a junior designer at several fashion houses, while Marcus climbed the journalism ladder. When our daughter Emma was born in 1988, Marcus convinced me to step back from my career. "Just temporarily," he said. "Just until Emma starts school," he promised. Temporary turned into decades. I became the wife who attended Fashion Week shows on Marcus's arm, the one who smiled for cameras at charity galas, the one who hosted dinner parties for designers and editors, while my own design sketches collected dust in our brownstone's spare room. Marcus's career flourished. He became editor-in-chief of Fashion Metropolitan at 45, one of the youngest ever to hold that position. The magazine became his kingdom, and he ruled it with an iron fist wrapped in Italian leather gloves. Everyone in the fashion industry either feared him or courted his favor. A bad review from Marcus Whitmore could end a designer's career. A cover feature could launch an unknown into stardom. I told myself I was happy. I had a beautiful home in the West Village, a daughter I adored who was now a civil rights attorney in Chicago, and a husband whose success meant I never had to worry about money. But there was this hollow feeling that grew larger each year, especially when I'd see new designers showcasing their work at Fashion Week. I'd think, that could have been me. That should have been me. Then came the pandemic in 2020. During those long months of lockdown, I started sketching again. Not just sketching, designing. Real collections. I'd always been passionate about sustainability, even back in the 80s before it was trendy. I started researching new eco-friendly fabrics. Hemp blends that felt like silk, recycled ocean plastic woven into elegant textiles, mushroom leather that looked identical to the real thing. I created an entire collection of evening wear that was both glamorous and completely sustainable. Every piece was designed to be timeless, not just for one season. When I finally showed Marcus my portfolio in late 2021, he barely looked up from his laptop. "That's nice, dear. A little hobby project." When I told him I wanted to actually produce the collection, to pitch it to investors, he laughed. Not a kind laugh. "Sarah, you haven't worked in fashion in over 30 years. The industry has moved on. You've moved on. This is just a midlife crisis. Or I suppose in your case, a late life crisis." The word stung, but I told myself he was just stressed about work. I didn't give up. I spent the next year refining my designs, researching manufacturers who could produce sustainable fabrics at scale, building a business plan. I even enrolled in online courses about sustainable fashion and circular economy models. At 60 years old, I was studying harder than I had in college. I reached out to old contacts from my days as a junior designer, the few who remembered me and were kind enough to respond. Most of them were encouraging. Some even offered advice. In March 2023, I got my chance. Through a former classmate from Parsons, I secured a spot to present my collection to a group of investors who specialized in sustainable fashion ventures at a private showcase during New York Fashion Week. It wasn't a runway show, just a presentation in a gallery space in Chelsea, but it was my shot. I was terrified and excited in equal measure. I made the mistake of telling Marcus. I thought, after a year of working on this, he'd finally take me seriously. Instead, he insisted on attending. "I can't have my wife embarrassing herself without someone there to manage the damage," he said. I should have told him not to come. I should have seen the red flags. But I was still operating under the delusion that despite everything, my husband wanted the best for me. The day of the presentation arrived. I wore one of my own designs, a navy dress made from recycled ocean plastic that draped like fine wool. I'd spent hours setting up the gallery space, arranging my sketches, fabric samples, and the 3 physical prototypes I'd managed to produce: an evening gown, a business suit, and a cocktail dress. The investors started arriving at 6 p.m. There were 7 of them, a mix of men and women, all dressed impeccably. I recognized 2 of them from Marcus's magazine features. Marcus arrived late, making an entrance as he always did. He kissed my cheek, then immediately started working the room, greeting the investors like they were his guests, not mine. I felt my confidence wavering but pushed through. At 6:30, I began my presentation. I talked about the environmental crisis in the fashion industry, how it's the 2nd largest polluter in the world, how fast fashion was destroying our planet. I showed them my designs, explained the innovative fabrics, walked them through my business plan for a made-to-order model that would eliminate waste. The investors were engaged. They asked questions about production costs, about scaling, about market demographics. One woman, Caroline Stevens, who ran a venture capital firm focused on sustainable businesses, seemed particularly interested. She was examining my evening gown prototype, feeling the fabric between her fingers. "This is remarkable," she said. "It feels like silk." That's when Marcus stood up. He'd been sitting in the front row the entire time, his expression growing more disdainful with each minute of my presentation. "Caroline," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "you're too kind. But let's be honest here." He turned to face the full room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse my wife. She seems to think burlap and recycled plastic belong on a runway. This is a sweet little retirement project, but let's not waste serious investors' time with Pinterest-inspired crafts." He gestured to the security guard stationed at the gallery entrance. It was a private event in a secured building. "Please escort her out. This is a professional event, and I'm afraid my wife has confused it with a community college art show." The room went completely silent. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Caroline Stevens looked horrified. A few investors shifted uncomfortably. But Marcus stood there with that smile he used when he'd just written a particularly scathing review, the one that said he knew exactly how much power he wielded. The security guard approached me reluctantly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. I saw pity in his eyes, which somehow made it worse. My hands started shaking. I bent down to gather my portfolio, my sketches, but they spilled everywhere. My evening gown prototype fell off its mannequin. I was on my hands and knees, picking up papers while my husband watched, and the investors stood frozen, not knowing what to do. "Leave it," Marcus said. "Someone will clean up." He looked at the investors. "Now, shall we discuss some real fashion innovations? I actually have several designers I'd love to introduce you to, people who understand the industry." I ran. There's no other word for it. I left everything, my designs, my prototypes, my business plan, and I ran out of that gallery. I could hear Marcus behind me, already pivoting the conversation, his voice confident and smooth. I made it to the elevator, then out to the street. It was raining. Of course it was raining, because the universe has a sense of dramatic irony. I didn't have an umbrella. I stood in the parking garage entrance across the street from the gallery, shaking from cold, from humiliation, from rage I'd suppressed for 3 decades. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 20. I was crying, my carefully applied makeup running down my face, my recycled plastic dress soaked through. I kept thinking about all those years I'd sacrificed my dreams for Marcus's career, how I'd convinced myself it was partnership when it was really just servitude. I thought about how he'd just destroyed the one thing I'd built for myself in 30 years. I thought about going back to our brownstone, to that spare room where my old sketches gathered dust, and just giving up. Just accepting that this was my life. That's when the black Mercedes pulled up. Not just any Mercedes, a vintage 1960s 600, pristine, the kind of car you see in museums. It stopped right in front of me, and the back window rolled down. I saw a woman, probably late 70s, elegant in a way that had nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with presence. She had silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a Chanel suit that was probably older than me and worth more than most people's cars. She looked at me with these sharp, knowing eyes. "Get in," she said. Not a question, not a request, a statement. I should have been scared. I should have questioned why a stranger in a luxury car was picking me up in a parking garage. But I was beyond caring. I got in. The interior smelled like leather and jasmine. The woman handed me a silk handkerchief without a word. Her driver, an elderly man in a proper chauffeur's uniform, pulled smoothly into traffic. "I'm Victoria," she said after a moment. "Victoria Zhang. And before you ask how I know what just happened, I was at your presentation. I came late, stood in the back. Your husband didn't see me." She paused. "I saw everything." I dabbed at my face with her handkerchief, probably ruining it with mascara. "I'm sorry you had to witness that." "Don't apologize." Her voice was sharp. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head. "Victoria Zhang." The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. I was a model in the 60s and 70s. Not just any model, I was the first Asian American woman on the cover of Vogue in 1967. I worked with Halston, with Yves Saint Laurent, with every major designer of that era. And then I became an investor. I've been funding fashion ventures for 40 years, with a particular focus on sustainable and ethical fashion for the last 20. She looked at me. "Your husband humiliated you in front of a room full of people. But what he doesn't know is that I've been looking for someone exactly like you for 3 years. I must have looked confused because she continued, "The fashion industry is dying, Sarah. Not commercially, it's making more money than ever. But morally, environmentally, it's dying. Fast fashion is destroying the planet. The industry needs a revolution, and it needs to come from someone who understands both the creative and the sustainable side. Someone who isn't a 25-year-old with a trust fund and a semester of design school. Someone with actual life experience, with perspective, with something to say." "I'm 61 years old," I said. "I haven't worked in fashion in 33 years. "I know. I did my research after I got your presentation materials last week. I've been researching you for days." She pulled out a tablet, showed me a file with my name on it. "Graduated Parsons 1984, top of your class. Worked at Calvin Klein as a junior designer, 1984 to 1986. Showed exceptional promise in sustainable fabric innovation. There's a note here from one of your professors saying you were ahead of your time. Then you got married and disappeared." I stared at the file. Someone had cared enough about me to research my dead career. "Your designs are extraordinary," Victoria continued. "That evening gown? I've been in this industry for 60 years, and I've never seen recycled plastic draped like that. Your business plan is solid. Your understanding of circular economy models is better than most venture-backed startups I've seen. The only thing you're missing is capital and industry connections." She smiled. "I can provide both." "Why would you do this?" I asked. "You don't even know me. Because 30 years ago, I was you. Not exactly I was in a different situation, different circumstances, but I was a woman in this industry who everyone had written off. Someone gave me a chance. I've spent my life looking for women to pay that forward to." And because she leaned forward, her eyes intense, "I'm about to teach your husband what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman." The car pulled up in front of a building in Soho, Victoria's office, as it turned out. We spent the next 4 hours there. She had her team pull up everything my designs, which someone had already photographed at the gallery, my business plan, my fabric samples. She introduced me to her chief operating officer, a brilliant woman named Janet who had an MBA from Wharton and had been working in sustainable fashion for 15 years. By midnight, we had a plan. Victoria would invest $2 million as seed capital. We'd establish a new company. I insisted on calling it Second Act Designs because that's what it was, my second act. We'd start with a limited collection, made to order, selling directly to consumers through a carefully crafted online presence. No traditional fashion shows, no courting Marcus's approval or his magazine's coverage. We'd build a different kind of fashion brand, one focused on quality, sustainability, and serving women like me, women over 50, who were invisible to the traditional fashion industry. "Your husband is going to try to destroy this," Victoria warned me. "The moment he finds out, he'll use every connection he has to bury you. He'll call in favors. He'll write scathing reviews. He'll make sure Fashion Metropolitan and every publication that follows his lead ignores you." "I know," I said. "But I'm not doing this for his approval anymore. I'm done seeking his approval." Victoria smiled. "Good, because we're not going to play by his rules. We're going to change the game entirely." I went home that night early morning. Actually, it was almost 2 a.m. Marcus was asleep, or pretending to be. I packed a bag quietly and left. I'd stayed at the brownstone for 35 years. I left it in under 35 minutes. I checked into a hotel that night, and the next morning, I called a divorce attorney. The next 6 months were the hardest and best of my life. The divorce was ugly. Marcus fought every step, not because he wanted me back, but because he couldn't stand the idea of me leaving him. He tried to claim my designs were marital property. He tried to get a cut of Victoria's investment. His lawyers were vicious, but my lawyer was better, and New York law was on my side. While the divorce proceedings crawled forward, I threw myself into building second act designs. Victoria wasn't just an investor, she was a mentor. She introduced me to suppliers, manufacturers, other designers. She taught me how to navigate the business side of fashion, something I'd never learned. Janet helped me build a digital marketing strategy that bypassed traditional fashion media entirely. We targeted women over 50 through Facebook, Instagram, through partnerships with influencers in that demographic that the fashion industry had long ignored. We launched in September 2023 with a collection of 12 pieces, 6 dresses, 3 suits, 2 coats, 1 jumpsuit. Every piece was made from sustainable fabrics, designed to last years instead of 1 season, cut to flatter real women's bodies, not just 20-year-old models. We priced them at what they were worth, $400 to $800 per piece. Expensive but not unreachable, and far less than comparable quality from luxury brands. The response was overwhelming. We sold out the entire first collection in 3 days. The second collection, launched in November, sold out in 6 hours. We couldn't manufacture fast enough. Women were hungry for what we were offering, fashion that didn't treat them like they were invisible after 50, that didn't assume sustainability meant sacrificing style, that was actually built to last. Meanwhile, Marcus tried everything to sabotage us. Fashion Metropolitan ran a scathing piece about failed designers trying to capitalize on sustainability trends. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone in the industry knew who they meant. Other publications that followed Marcus's lead either ignored us entirely or wrote dismissive reviews, but it didn't matter. We weren't trying to impress fashion editors. We were selling directly to our customers, and they loved us. By January 2024, Second Act Designs was generating $200,000 in monthly revenue. By March, $500,000. We'd hired 15 employees, opened a small showroom in Soho, were in talks with department stores about carrying our line. Victoria was thrilled. "This is exactly what I hoped for," she told me. "You're proving that sustainable fashion can be both beautiful and profitable." The divorce was finalized in April 2024. I got the brownstone, which I immediately sold, in a substantial settlement. Marcus got to keep his precious career, though it was starting to crumble. Fashion Metropolitan was losing advertisers. Young designers were refusing to participate in features, citing Marcus's problematic attitude toward women and sustainability. The industry was changing, and Marcus was being left behind. In May, we were approached by Nordstrom about a partnership. They wanted to feature Second Act Designs in all their major stores, with special shop-in-shop installations for the brand. It was the kind of deal that would take us from successful startup to legitimate fashion brand. The signing was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at Nordstrom's corporate offices in Seattle. Marcus somehow found out. He called me the night before. It was the first time we'd spoken directly since the divorce finalized. "Sarah," he said, his voice the fake friendly tone he used when he wanted something, "I've been thinking. What happened between us? The way I treated you, I was wrong. I was threatened by your talent. I can see that now. Your line is impressive. Really impressive. I'd love to do a feature on you in Fashion Metropolitan. A cover story, maybe. The Phoenix Rising. How Sarah Chen built a fashion empire. He paused. And maybe we could talk. About us. About giving things another try. We were good together once. I let him finish. Then I said, very calmly, Marcus, do you know why Second Act Designs is succeeding? Well, you have a good product. Because we don't need your approval. We don't need Fashion Metropolitan. We don't need the traditional fashion industry gatekeepers at all. We built something completely outside your system, and it works better. As for us, there is no us. There hasn't been an us for 35 years. There was you, and there was your servant who you happened to be married to. I took a breath. I hope someday you understand what you lost. Not me, I'm the one who dodged the bullet by leaving. But the chance to be part of something meaningful, instead of just being a gatekeeper for a dying industry. I hung up. He called back 7 times. I blocked the number. The Nordstrom deal went through. Second Act Designs is now sold in 47 stores across the country. We launched a men's line last month. Emma's husband helped consult on it. We're on track to do $15 million in revenue this year. I'm 62 years old, and I've never been more successful or more fulfilled. I saw Marcus a month ago at a fashion industry event. Ironic, since I swore I'd never go to those again, but I was receiving an award for sustainable fashion innovation. He looked older, tired. Fashion Metropolitan had just laid off a third of its staff. He tried to approach me, but Victoria intercepted him. I watched from across the room as she said something to him, very brief, very pointed. Whatever it was made him pale and walk away quickly. Later, I asked her what she'd said. Victoria smiled. I told him that I was at that gallery presentation in March 2023. I told him I saw everything he did. And I told him that I've been in this industry for 60 years. And I've never seen someone destroy their own legacy quite as thoroughly as he destroyed his the moment he decided his ego was more important than his wife's dreams. You know what the best part is? It's not the money, though financial independence is wonderful. It's not the success, though I won't lie and say that doesn't feel good. It's not even the satisfaction of proving Marcus wrong. The best part is the emails I get from customers. Women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, telling me that they haven't felt beautiful in years, that the fashion industry made them feel invisible, that Second Act Designs made them feel seen again. Women who tell me they were inspired to start their own second acts, new careers, new businesses, new dreams. I keep one email pinned to my office wall. It's from a 65-year-old woman in Portland who wrote, I spent 40 years thinking my best days were behind me. Your story showed me they were actually still ahead. Thank you for teaching me it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. That's why I tell this story. Not for revenge, though I won't pretend that doesn't taste sweet, but because there are women out there right now who are where I was standing in the rain, humiliated, believing their time has passed. I need them to know it hasn't. Your best work, your most authentic self, your greatest success, it might all still be waiting. You just have to be brave enough to walk toward it, even when the people who should support you are tearing you down. Marcus taught me one valuable lesson in our 35 years together, though he didn't mean to. The people who underestimate you are doing you a favor. They're showing you exactly who not to be. They're giving you the motivation to prove them wrong. And sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest gift you can receive, because it means no one sees you coming until it's too late for them to stop you. I'm 62 years old, and I'm just getting started. Second Act Designs is planning to expand internationally next year. We're developing a program to mentor women over 50 who want to start their own sustainable fashion businesses. Victoria and I are writing a book about building businesses in your second act of life. My daughter tells me I'm busier now than I was when she was a kid, and she's right. But this time, I'm busy building something that matters, something that's mine. So if you're listening to this and you're in that parking garage moment, standing in the rain, humiliated, thinking it's over, I need you to know, it's not over. It's just beginning. The person who underestimated you just gave you the fuel you need to build something they can't even imagine. Don't waste it. Don't let them make you small. Take that pain, that humiliation, that rage, and transform it into something extraordinary. Because here's what I learned. Being underestimated isn't a limitation. It's a superpower. It means you can work quietly, build strategically, and emerge fully formed before anyone realizes what you've done. By the time they see you, it's too late. You've already won. Did you like the story? If you did, please like, comment, and watch until the end. I share these stories because I believe they matter. Because I believe your story matters. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're too old, too inexperienced, too late, I'm here to tell you they're wrong. Your second act is waiting. Go claim it.